Awesome. So yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining in such huge numbers. I guess we didn't expect too many people to join, but that's amazing. Like this is the first ever dependency track community meeting, and mainly two reasons for doing this. Of course, we want to like give you an update on the project, where we are right now, where the project is going. But we also want to give you the opportunity to ask questions or even ask each other's questions in like a different scenario than just GitHub or Slack. So we have a few minutes allocated for questions. So please use this opportunity to ask them if they come up. A little agenda for today. First, we will do a little introduction of the team, like everyone will introduce themselves. Then a little bit about the plans for upcoming releases for the next two versions. Then a little block for Q&A. Again, if you have questions, please do ask them. All the questions we don't get to answer like live, we will answer offline and then send to all the participants or share them in Slack or wherever appropriate. Then we have prepared something very special, which is a teaser for Project Hyades, which we have been working on for a while now. We will get to what it is and what it does and what it doesn't in a few, like towards the end, I guess. And then after that, if we still have time, like we have prepared a few demos, and we know demos take longer than expected most of the time. So if we still have time after that, we will do another Q&A. But again, you can always ask questions offline, send us in Slack or email or whatever you prefer. First, get to know the team. I will do the first part because I'm already talking, I guess. So yeah, hi, I'm Niklas. I'm nsguru on Slack, GitHub, and Twitter, and wherever else. I live in northern Germany, pretty close to the Danish border, and I've been a co-leader of the Dependency-Track project since roughly May 2022, I guess. And I'm also involved a little bit in the CycloneDX community. I maintain the official Go tooling for that. Yeah, for CycloneDX essentially. Who wants to go next? Maybe Steve.
Sure. First of all, welcome everyone. Thanks for spending the next hour with us. I'm Steve Springett. I started the Dependency-Track project about 10 years ago. We celebrated our 10th anniversary, so yay. We've been doing SBOMs for longer than SBOM was a term. Founder of the CycloneDX project and currently in the chair of that. In my day job, I am the director of product security at ServiceNow, where me and my team get to help the thousands of developers that we have build and deliver secure and resilient software. I'm also the, I guess, the director-elect of the OWASP Foundation itself, Global Board of Directors. So it's great to have you all here, and I'll pass it off to Caroline.
Hello, everyone. I'm Caroline. I am a contributor of Dependency-Track, just trying to help out wherever I can, and my day job is a cybersecurity engineer at IBM. I will pass it on to Melba.
Hey folks, my name is Melba Lopez. I work for IBM. I'm part of the Office of the CISO, working on supply chain security, and I'm just trying to help out as much as I can. Thanks, and I'll pass it on to Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Simons. I am not a developer. I'm a former chemical engineer, archaeologist, factory manager, software tester, and various other things. And I'm wearing this sweatshirt because working with dependency track issues is herding cats. I've been involved with dependency track now for about 4 or 5 years, starting off when our legal department said, we want you to give us a spreadsheet manually generated with all of your software licenses. And I said, no, big fat no. I went out searching, and here I am, all these years later, still enjoying dependency track. That's me.
Do
you want to pass on? Sorry.
Sorry. Who's next? Who's left?
I can go next. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, Vinod, go ahead.
No, so sorry about that. So my name is Vinodanandan. I'm based in London. I started using Dependency Track for the first time back in 2017 for a startup company. And now I'm working for one of the biggest banks. And we needed a scalable dependency track for the internal usage. So that's why we decided to build one project Hyades, and we decided to contribute back to the community. And the team is going to demo more about that after this. Yeah, thanks. Next, Meha, please go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks, Vinod. Hey everyone, my name is Meha, and I came to know about dependency track when I met Vinod and Nicholas last year, and I have contributed multiple features since then. I have been working in the software industry for more than 8 years now. My open source journey started with dependency track and looking at the extent of impact it is going to make and it is making. I want to continue doing so. So yeah, here I am. Saiba, you want to go next?
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Saiba Mittal. I'm based in Dublin, Ireland, and I'm working with Meha, Vinod, and Nicholas. Dependency Track is also my first open source contribution. I've been working on this project since 1.5 years now, and I hope to contribute more.
Amazing. I think that's all, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks all for introducing yourselves, and thanks for all the effort you put into the dependency track project. Much appreciated. Yeah, so let's continue. I hope you can still see my slides. So yeah, the plan for the upcoming releases, which will be 4.10 and 4.11. We released 4.9.1 a week, 2 weeks ago, not entirely sure. So let's maybe stay at this slide first. One of the things that we really want to do or want to achieve is to use or to achieve like shorter release cycles, essentially. We've been not doing a great job of that recently with the recent releases, but we want to get the features into the hands of users sooner, and the bug fixes, of course, as well. And whenever you, like the users or the community, contribute stuff to dependency track, of course, you want to see it sooner in the actual release, right? So those are the few reasons of why we plan to do shorter release cycles. That also brings us to 4.10, the next release. We are planning or hoping to get it out end of this week or start of next week. We will see how that goes, but yeah, that's the aim. And like the biggest features of that release are mostly supporting mirroring of the NVD via API. You may know that currently dependency track is mirroring the NVD via feed files, like large JSON files. And the NVD has decided to deprecate those by the middle or end of next month officially. The communication around that has been a little bit iffy. So what we are doing now is we will give you an option to enable mirroring via the NVD REST API. You can opt into that. The only caveat to this whole approach is you will need an NVD API key. Otherwise, you will get like very aggressive rate limiting from the NVD. So that's why it's not a default behavior right now. And when you upgrade to 4.10, nothing is changing except when you like actively enable this feature. And you can use it without API key if you want, but it will be slower in mirroring because just downloading all this data takes a little bit longer. Then there will be a retry mechanism for downloading NVD feeds. So the existing files, we noticed that even downloading those can sometimes be a little bit unreliable. So what we're doing now is we added an like a retry mechanism. Whenever there's like a transient error, it will just retry, and it will keep retrying for I think up to a minute, and that resolves most of the issues we saw so far. Also, we got a contribution to support like lookups for latest versions in GitHub repositories. So if you have packages that have pearls that refer to GitHub, for those we can now also detect the latest version. Just like we can for Maven Central or like Ruby Gems. On a similar note, there will be support for authentication with public repositories. If you are using something like Nexus Repository Manager or Artifactory, like things that are normally hosted inside your organization, for those we already supported authentication before, but now you can also use it for things that do not contain components internal to your organization. Say you have a vendor that provides you proprietary libraries. You can use this feature now to access their repositories as well. Other than that, performance improvements in like search index maintenance. The maintenance has been a little bit heavyweight in recent releases, and it's now being slimmed down. It's much faster, much more resource efficient. So that's always a bonus. And then we're trying to make the move to the newest Java version soon-ish. The first part will be to upgrading the Java version in the container images we distribute. We will update that to 21. The application itself, however, is still built against Java 17. So if you run dependency track outside of containers in your own VM with your own Java deployment, it will continue to work with Java 17. Yeah, other than that, multiple bug fixes and improvements as always. You can always check out the milestones on GitHub or wait for the changelog when it is released. Then for 4.11, so the next version, what we're aiming to do is we want to add support for CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. Many folks have been requesting this feature, and we know we have to deliver it. So this is definitely planned. Also, like the export of CycloneDX bombs in all supported specification versions. Right now, when you download an SBOM or a bomb from dependency track, it will always be valid for the latest version spec. But some users may still rely on version 1.4 or version 1.3. So this feature is for those users. Yeah, and we also made a few changes for the CPE matching in 4.9. There have been a few disconnects between what NIST defines as the matching algorithm and what Dependency-Track did. So we fixed multiple issues in that, but the solution is still not perfect, and there will still be occasions where false positives are being reported. So we want to work on this. Again, community was very helpful on this issue in identifying this and helping me resolve it, or helping us resolve it. Then there's also the global audit view for vulnerabilities. Also, this one is a contribution as well from the community. It has been pending for a while, wasn't quite yet ready for release, but I think we're getting very close. There was a blocker that we recently, or that has a PR queued essentially that just needs to be merged. So this is also planned. And what this essentially is, is it's just one view where you will see all the vulnerabilities reported across your entire portfolio, and you will be able to sort and filter with multiple criteria. Yeah, that's what this is used for. And then much requested by Mark Simon specifically is the functionality for scaling of EPSS scores. Right now, EPSS scores are only attached to one vulnerability. But for example, if one component has multiple vulnerabilities, EPSS, or first the organization behind it, defines an algorithm to scale it up to the component level or even to the project level. So you get more meaning from these scores once this is implemented. This is everything that is planned so far, but of course we always have room for things that are requested ad hoc, bugs that are reported ad hoc. If there's something critical or something that prevents you from effectively using dependency track, please just keep reporting this, and we will fix it soon and fix it in this release as well. That being said, I think now is the time slot for question and answers. Do we have some in the chat?
Yeah, so somebody asked about the API keys for NBD. Steve provided the link to the direct request form. If you want to actually come off mute, you can raise your hand and I can take you off mute. Otherwise, feel free to put it in the chat. Looks like Chris Fort, are there any plans for more robust API key management? We have a public endpoint and I'd like to rotate keys based on usage, but there's very little info coming from dtrack.
Having it planned would be an overstatement, I guess, but we are aware that this needs improvement. I guess that is kind of the answer. The work on this is under-resourced, if you will. But if this is something that the community really wants, then it shouldn't be too hard to implement, in my opinion. So if this is something that is dearly needed, we can maybe put it into 4.11 or 4.12.
I would recommend to create an issue if one doesn't already exist, because I think there's a couple different ways that we could go about this. and we should probably talk about the different options available in a ticket.
I may be misremembering this, but I think there's an issue in Alpine already for this.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so we'll try to find that issue. And then Chris also asked, are there any plans for direct OPA integration?
That's a very good question. For OPA, no, but for something very, very similar, yes. And in fact, it is coming very soon, and we will demo it today. So I guess stay tuned.
From Osama, I think is how you pronounce it. Are you planning to integrate an open source AI model that help in vulnerability identification or SBOM analysis?
I personally didn't do much research in this area. Maybe Steve or Mark or anyone else on the team.
I think there's a desire to have stack traces and that kind of reachability information in Dependency-Track at some point in time. But Dependency-Track itself doesn't perform any kind of advanced analysis. We really just rely on the contents of the SBOM. Now, I do think there's opportunity for a lot more, how would you say, leading trails, indicators of risk, as opposed to more trailing indicators, which EPSS is and CVEs are, and you know, that sort of thing. EPSS, KEV. These are all trailing indicators. I think there's a lot of room for leading indicators, but you know, we really need the input from the community to help guide that conversation.
And from L, any plans to support CPE for packages identification?
I think we already have that and have had that for a while. Maybe could you specify what you mean with package identification? So right now, Dependency-Track supports ingesting this data from SBOMs, and we also support like matching this data against the NVD database. Those are the main functions right now, but maybe I am misunderstanding what you mean with package identification.
So L, if you can, it says Perl has its advantages, but it's not ideal, and not all tools support it, but support CPEs, which are also non-ideal. It would be good to have both. I believe we do have both.
Yep, Dependency-Track supports both. Yes, indeed.
Okay. From Jamie, has there been any investigation around using end-of-life.date for looking up flagging end-of-life dependencies? I found this has been a great way of flagging up things based on similar projects to Dependency-Track that I've been building.
Investigation, yes. I think Steve and I looked into this a while ago. But the missing piece here is that the end-of-life.date site does not provide Perl lookups or lookups based on Perl. You have to know the product name, and the product name has to be like correct. They have Spring Framework as a product, but in reality, when you upload an SBOM, you get Spring Core, Spring Web, Spring something. So there needs to be some kind of mapping to make this work reliably. The last status I have is that the team at end-of-life.date is working on this to add Perl support. But until this is done, the best we can do is build a best effort that is pretty fuzzy, I would say. So trying to do some fuzzy matching would be possible, but if that is what you want is the question.
The other challenge with end of life is that the current end-of-life.date project does not support time series. It's very common for open source projects to end of life something and then bring it back at a later time and then deprecate it again. For example, this happened to the Twitter Bootstrap project, notoriously leaving millions of organizations that had adopted it kind of stranded until it was brought back. So we want to really push that group to support time series metrics, because that's going to give you a lot more granularity on end of life data.
Are there any plans to support Perl lookups and indexes other than Sonatype? That's from Peter.
There is support for Sneak already, but Sneak requires a paid subscription. We also support like mirroring of the GitHub advisory database, which also supports Perl, at least once it's in Dependency-Track. And we have support for mirroring the OSV database, which also provides Perl data. So these options you already have. And if there are more providers that support Perl lookups, then we are more than happy to support them as well.
And then regarding end-of-life question, there's an issue on end-of-life, and perhaps that is a reference to the end-of-life.date question. Is there any plans to provide some kind of CPE resolver, for instance, find the correct vendor based on package name and version? That's from Hoffman.
No active plan on that. And the problem with CPE lookups is they also are very fuzzy because the CPE naming is notorious for being wrong oftentimes. Dependency-Track itself, please correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, has being misreported multiple times in CVEs, like the CPE was wrong. There are a few solutions, I think. There's a database Perl to CPE from these Nextbee folks, which you may be able to use, but Dependency-Track natively integrating something like this, I would question if that's useful.
Yeah, I would like to discover a way, not using CPEs, to identify the correct vendor. However, because that is just one of many parameters that could be used for more leading indicators of risk.
Okay, then Ali says, if mirroring the NVD with an API key, can DT be a source of NVD data to other apps?
Good question. So at the moment, and maybe for a little bit of context, so DT previously downloaded the feed files from the NVD and then made those available via like HTTP endpoint to other applications in your organization. That will, with how it is implemented right now, not to work with the API version. That being said, we have a feature like a feature toggle. When you flick on the API mirroring right now, you can decide to still download the feed files if you want. As long as they are available, Dependency-Track will try to download them, but not actually parse them into the database. So this is a transitional thing, I guess. And then actually using this data mirrored via the API, making this available via file again, we can work on that, yes. We should work on this, let me say it that way. But in the first iteration, it will not be possible.
So Ralph has, are there any plans to support adding something like custom plugins? For example, internal workflow support that one can add to Dependency-Track easily. I know using API is an option, but some things would be easier with adding UI elements too.
No current plans, but I remember Steve bringing something similar up, having a plugin architecture for multiple areas of the application. Maybe to the person who asked that question, maybe raise an issue for this so we can discuss and explore what options we have.
Yeah, I think we might have talked about this once, about doing more of a plugin type architecture, but I don't think we.
Yeah, my initial thought was to, upon different types of conditions, be able to execute code that would be plugins provided by the users. Ideally, the code that could be executed would either be JavaScript or Python that would be running on the Dependency-Track instance itself, and kind of tie into all the other workflows that we have. It would certainly allow much greater flexibility in being able to customize Dependency-Track to do, better, tighter integration with organizations. But I had not envisioned supporting the UI in that. So that would be maybe a multi-phase kind of approach that we might have to take if we go down this path.
And Ollie has said, I would like to be able to apply filters before SBOM parsing. filter / manipulation, fixing known errors, adding data that is missing. So do we know if we're gonna allow people to edit the SBOMs prior to parsing the SBOM, I guess?
I would
think it
love to
wasn't.
understand the use case on this.
Ollie, if you can expand on that, that would be great.
We already allow manually add components, right? And customize the components.
Okay.
Says I'll try to write something up.
Yeah.
Anybody else? And then folks, again, if you want to come off mute and speak, feel free to raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Otherwise, you can write in the chat.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment. I just posted a blog post link, and Vinod has also given one concerning the whole issue of identification and CPEs and Perl. It's a big problem, as has been alluded to, but those resources will actually help you users sort of like understand why it's a problem, but also possibly give hope that it's being worked on, and it's being worked on by people who love Dependency-Track. And when there are solutions, it will be in Dependency-Track. The other thing is concerning filtering and manipulation. I think that the bomb maturity model that was released last week will actually help with some of that, so that we can actually do enhancement of bombs to actually fit profiles, so that you can actually then generate a bomb, for instance, for your legal department, which contains licensing information, but doesn't include the stuff that they do not need. I think that's it. If there's something else, I'll come back later.
Thanks, Mark. And Ollie.
I remembered what it was. Sorry. The next team meeting is actually going, hopefully is going to actually discuss some of the issues with fixing data. Just as an example, if you ingest vulnerability data that says, for instance, iText has got a vulnerability, and later on it's updated to say that actually the module that has the problem is iText PDF, there will still be identification of the iText component in your dependency track, depending on how old your data is, you know, how long you've been running dependency track, when the vulnerability information was available, and where it came from. Because as an example, Sonatype, when they decide that they've made a mess of data, they don't kind of tell us about it in the API, they just delete it. So we get a 404. But it's something that will be discussed by the team to actually improve that. How can we go about improving the sort of the behind the scenes kind of like data fixing?
I just want to add to the Ralph question. Ralph had a good question, a detailed question. I think this is something Nicholas is going to demo with the CEL policy. Nicholas, I don't know if you read the question.
No, could you read it maybe?
Yeah,
so everyone knows.
Yeah, one issue I'm facing, and which was recently also brought up by another company I talked to properly assess the risk, we need a way to give a risk assessment based on the used environment parameters and similar, like internet facing, intranet with CEL policy. So that's a example. Critical vulnerability of a component might be medium. Issue for the application depends upon how the component is used. The other company I talked to end up buying a solution instead of using Dependency-Track because of this especially. So yeah, so maybe you can explain that CEL policy with some project properties and everything, we can demonstrate some of that scenario. Yeah.
I'd
And
like to, I guess, understand a little bit more about the requirement, right? There's a lot of different risk management frameworks. Adopting one might not necessarily be applicable to others. If Dependency-Track were to adopt one, it would be the OWASP risk rating methodology, because it's another OWASP project and it can be customized, but there's things in it that it doesn't support, like safety. So I would love to start for this if the existing auditing work.
so I think, because he also mentioned, the vulnerability criticality is always the one of the component it would need a way to override. And I know we've talked about this before, and there is an issue where you want to use the environmental factors of the CVSS score as an example. You want to be able to customize the scoring based off the environment that particular application is in. So potentially that's what Ralph is alluding to. I don't know if he can confirm or not, but that might be what he's alluding to.
Yeah, so internally in our employer, like we have similar stuff like internet facing application with the CVS factor particular things we need to classify. We are not supposed to look at the severity set by NVD, right? So we call it like a GEM policy. So it's a internal policy we are overriding. So similarly, we can do policy in Dependency-Track and take all these factors and consider all this. Yeah.
So I want to do a time check. It is 34 past the hour, so I don't know how much time we need for the demo.
I think we need to jump into demo here, Nicholas.
Sure, alrighty. Okay, so then we already teased a little bit of what we're going to show next, which is dubbed Project Hyades or Hyades. How this came to be is many organizations or many people noticed that Dependency-Track is a very useful piece of software, but they kind of run into limits when it comes to very large portfolios, like thousands or like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of projects that need to be continuously analyzed, that need to get bombs ingested, vulnerabilities need to be scanned, etc. There was also a concern, is maybe too much, but Dependency-Track historically only supported like one application instance. You couldn't run active deployments, make it highly available. So when you run Dependency-Track in critical workflows, maybe that are part of your CI pipeline or of your continuous delivery pipeline where you gate deployments actually, you need software to be present and you need this to be available. Otherwise, just everything goes haywire, right? And then Dependency-Track wasn't really designed for cloud native deployments, I would say. So deploying it in solutions like Kubernetes can be done, no question, but it's not like the most intuitive thing to do. So these are the three main objectives that we had with Project Hyades. It was mainly to enable Dependency-Track to handle portfolios spanning hundreds of thousands of projects, hopefully at some point more, who knows. Improve the resilience of Dependency-Track, providing more confidence when relying on it in critical workflows, as I just mentioned, and also making it a little bit more cloud native. Cloud native is a little bit too much in this state, but that is the aim, right? It should be easier to deploy in solutions like Kubernetes or even Docker Compose or the HashiCorp stack, essentially. So that is what we set out to do. And we have a GitHub repository. This has all been built in public. There's more documentation than what we will be able to cover now, especially for the implementation details. But one of the main things is that Dependency-Track did many things in memory. So when you submit a bomb, for example, it's to be processed, but then Dependency-Track shuts down. This bomb is getting lost forever, right? And the same is for all the other tasks that Dependency-Track does, be it vulnerability analysis, repository meta-analysis, and so on. So we needed a way to make this external, make this work external, so it can be picked up by multiple instances. And what we ended up doing is we introduced Apache Kafka, or like the Kafka API essentially. We evaluated multiple message buses or message queues, event streaming solutions, And one big benefit that Kafka has that others don't is that Kafka is turning out to be an industry. It's gaining a lot of adoption in the industry, which means that many cloud services provided out of the box. Like in all clouds, I think except Google Cloud, you get this natively, like a hosted service. There are alternative solutions to it. Like you don't have to use Apache Kafka, which is a Java-based application. You can use more lighter weight solutions like Red Panda, or there's an upcoming Warp Stream project that uses S3 to store data. So it's kind of evolving to be a standard solution, I would say, and that is one of the key reasons why we chose it. So yeah, what we did is we decoupled various responsibilities from the monolithic API server, shoved it into external services. As you can see here, there's a mirror service for pulling in data from the NVD, from GitHub advisories, from OSV, etc., and making that available as a stream of, or a feed of CycloneDX documents in the bill of vulnerabilities format. And this stream, even other applications other than Dependency-Track can tap in and consume if they want. Then publishing of notifications has been externalized, which is just like used to push notifications from the Dependency-Track system to external things like webhooks, Microsoft Teams, Slack, etc. The vulnerability analysis has been externalized, and that is just pulling in the data from the database to do internal analysis based on the data from NVD, GitHub, OSV, but it can also reach out to external services like Sneak or OSS Index from Sonatype. The same thing happened for the repository metadata analysis, which is just reaching out to various repositories. Again, be it internal ones like Artifactory or Nexus Repository Manager, or external things like Maven Central, NPM Registry, what have you. And in this process of doing this stuff, the API server is now free to do more stuff that is not reaching out to external services. So if those external services are being down, if they are unreliable, if they take longer than expected, the API server has like no issue in consuming more SBOMs that you submit to it. That was one of the main reasons for doing it this way. Also, all of these services, as you can see, that are, like it is kind of indicated by the shadow behind them, they are horizontally scalable, so they are highly available as well. If one instance is down, you can still use the other one. They will balance the load if that happens. Yeah, and in general, this Hyades project is completely compatible with Dependency-Track. It is more of a not a subset. It's a superset of Dependency-Track. We have ported all of the changes since up to 4.9.1 to Hyades, so it supports everything that Dependency-Track does, but it also supports a bit more, and we're going to show a bit about that in a few moments, because we can now do things we couldn't previously do. Yeah, there's a link here, or if you have a mobile phone handy, use the QR code. But yeah, this is what we're currently at. This has been tested with up to 60,000 projects right now in a production workload. It was behaving very well, and we are, like this was even months ago. Since then, we applied multiple other optimizations, like we have assessed critical paths in the API server. For example, BOM processing of uploaded BOMs. Because once you start getting into the multiple tens of thousands of projects region, you see where bottlenecks are, and we saw those and we addressed those as well. So the API server itself also got some benefits out of it, in addition to being scalable as well. That is the rough overview. Team, please remind me if I missed something. No reminder? That sounds good. Okay, so then the next step that we would like to take is to give you a demonstration of two new features that we built on top of Hyades. And this is first, what I will going to demonstrate, support for CEL policies. And that will feed into the question that was asked earlier, I think by Chris. You asked about OPA, which is a policy engine. And OPA is essentially an external service that you send JSON to, and you get like a policy decision back based on the data you send. We decided to not go this route for policies because you don't know upfront what kind of data is being used in these policy definitions. So you end up like sending a lot of data over the wire which is super inefficient. So what we did instead is we adopted CEL, which is the common expression language. It has been adopted by Kubernetes as well for certain use cases. And the good thing about that is it's entirely evaluated in memory. And because we parse the expressions, we also know what kind of data is being required. So we can be smart about what we load from the database, which in turn means this is super, super efficient to execute. So let me just reshare my screen here. I think it's this one. Yep. Okay, so this is the dependency track UI that you know and love, I hope. If you're unaware of how policies currently work is you define policies, and each policy can have a violation state, which is either inform, warn, or fail. So let's say a warn. You can have an operator, which is either any or all, which means, or any means is if any of the conditions that you define matches, then the entire policy fails. And all means if all of the condition matches match, then the policy fails. And we support a few like basic conditions out of the box. For example, you could say, hey, please match this condition if the component name is Jackson data bind, and if the component has a vulnerability that has the ID CVE123. Right, so that would be your, whoops, Jackson with critical vuln. Like maybe this is some log4j type, log4shell type of stuff, right? Where you want to be notified when this specific vulnerability has been found. So as you can imagine, this works for basic policy use cases. But once you get into more detailed stuff, more complex stuff, that gets very overwhelming. And some things you simply cannot do because not all data is accessible here. And if you wanted to say only match when this vulnerability has this CVE ID and is of critical severity, this is currently not possible. And you can also not like access the CVSS score vector, sorry. Yeah, so lots of things that this implementation cannot do, and this is why we wanted to have a more powerful policy solution, I guess. So again, I already teased a little bit about this. We built a CEL integration, and this is still a very early look, right? It's not production ready yet. But the way how it will work is you can select expression as condition. You will get a fancy schmancy code editor here, and you will be able to select what type of violation this would be if this matches, which could either be license, operational, or security. If you have a policy or a condition that matches on vulnerability details, then you would, for example, choose security here. And then in this field, you get access to multiple variables that we provide to you, that Dependency-Track provides to you. And we give certain guarantees as to which data you can access and which you cannot. All of the data that, like I will show you a reference in a few moments. But for example, you get a component variable. And for this one, you can, for example, access the name. So if the name is equal to Jackson data bind, this would be a valid policy. And as you already saw, like when I mistype something, for example, if the name field doesn't exist, you get a nice feedback. I'm not sure if you see the pop-up here, but it's saying undefined field NEM for me right now. So basic syntax checking and checking if you're accessing existing fields is there. We are planning to add like auto-completion as well and more advanced features. The editor being used here is the same one that is powering VS Code. So all of these features are potentially doable. We just need to implement them, I guess. But yeah, that's basically how it works. Now let me just reshare to tell you or to show you what kind of data you can access with this. So you get access to a component variable, a project variable, and a vulns variable, which then lists all of the vulnerabilities a given component is affected by. And in this reference documentation, we will probably share it when it is production ready, I guess, but it's on GitHub. You can see it already. We give you access to all of these different fields that you maybe already know from the data model, from components to licenses to projects, which also includes tags, for example. Project properties for vulnerabilities, we give you everything we know, including all of these different risk scorings and aliases, whatever have you. So this all is accessible at your fingertips, for lack of better words. And being able to build this inside of Dependency-Track, one of the nice side effects is we can also offer custom functions that you can use. For example, that can be very useful for traversing the dependency graph. So you will be able to say or to bind your policies to components being a dependency of another component, for example, or other components being present in the project, if that's what you want. And actually, let me give you I'm rushing this a bit for the lack of time, I guess. But let me just quickly demonstrate to you how this can work in practice. So I have this policy already. And if I now copy paste a prepared one, like this, can I get this? So, okay, so this policy says if the component has if there exists a vulnerability for this component that has the ID so-and-so, the component name is common JX path, and the component is not a dependency, be it transitive or direct, of another component that has the group org Spring Framework Cloud. So we can see if that works. I prepared an SBOM for that. Let's just create a project here. As usual, you would upload the BOM. And what I've done is I prepared an application where this given library, the vulnerable library, is introduced by Spring Cloud. So let me just upload an SBOM here. It's already imported, and I should see a JX path vulnerability here. So it has been found. And if I click on the dependency graph, I can see that it is introduced twice or through multiple ways. And if I follow this graph, I can see that it is introduced by a component that has the group org Spring Framework Cloud. So in this case, I would expect no policy violation because I explicitly said not a dependency of Spring Cloud. And in fact, I do not get one. So if I upload another project now, or the BOM of another project, where the dependency is not introduced through Spring Cloud, see how that goes. So a component is still there. And this time it's not coming in through Spring Cloud. As you can see, it's coming through Apache Camel. So now I should see a policy violation, right? And I do. So yay, works. And this is just, again, one simple example of what you can do. I noted the potential need to access things like the CVSS vector, for example. Let me just see here. Again, copy pasting examples. With this policy, for example, you could say only match on if the component is part of a project that has been labeled as public facing, and it has a vulnerability that is either high or critical in severity, and the CVSS v3 vector has an attack vector of network. And of course, you can use regex in here if you want. It is very, very flexible. So yeah, all of these things perfectly possible. It is already working like this, as you can see, I guess. Another thing that you can do is you can, a common way, let me just see one last example. Say you get software from a third-party vendor, and you want to be sure that they do not introduce certain high-profile vulnerabilities, for example, the strut CVE or log4shell or spring4shell. So you can have a policy that says only match on projects with the tag third party, and if any of these vulnerabilities exists in here. And of course, you can do lots of stuff with licenses as well, but I'm not going to show them right now. So yeah, that was a quick sneak peek of CEL policies in Hyades right now. So this is working in Hyades. but it should be back portable to dependency track as well. We are looking into doing that, so even like existing users should get the benefit of this. That is the aim.
Nicholas, one of the questions in the chat was, does Hyades allow me to warn in case of outdated component versions, EPSS plus CVSS levels?
Sorry, could you repeat? Does it allow to warn?
To warn in case of outdated component versions, EPSS plus CVSS levels.
Yeah, so dependency track has already or has always supported warning you about newer versions being available, so that already works. EPSS, severity, etc. I think we already do that, right? In more or less this extent.
Can we access it in the CEL policy EPSS?
Yeah, all this data is accessible in CEL as well. Yes. I'm sorry, I missed if this was a CEL policy
It's
question.
asking about Hyades, but I'm not sure what meant by Hyades. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you scroll up, it's from George Brunner. It was at 48-minute mark.
Yeah, also we can have complex policies like if a project is released 10 years ago, I don't know, 5 years ago, and there is a newer version is available, and the EPSS score is that, or CVSS score is this, we can fail, or we can create all these complex policies, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the goal of this is to make all the data available that dependency track has in one form or another. And if we have to create like custom functions for this to make it possible, then we will do that.
Yeah, I think we have more questions, Nicholas. Yeah, the policies available through API, right? The CEL policies can be, I think that is another question as well. Like, but I think we have the time for the next demo as well. So maybe we can take these questions offline. Nicholas, is that?
Yeah,
that good?
that's fine with me.
Yeah. So yeah, Meha, you would like to go next with the next demo?
Yeah, thanks, Vinod. So yeah, I will be demoing another feature that we have added to Hyades as a team, and that's the integrity analysis for components of a given project. So by integrity analysis, we would mean that for any given component, we have a certain set of hashes that it exposes in the SBOM, for example, and then there are external sources that we can rely on for this information. So for example, for Maven-based components, we have Maven Central that we can reach out to and see if the component is actually legit. So we have developed a feature that would enable you to get this information and verify the validity of the components that exist in the project. So I'll share my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. So currently on the dependency track UI, here we have these repositories that are configured, right? For Maven, for example, this is how it looks like. So the integrity analysis feature, first of all, it is configurable. So you can have it on or off in a given instance of dependency track. And when it is off, obviously, you won't get that information. But when you switch it on, it would start working. And it works in a similar fashion how repository meta-analysis works. So meta-analysis, we all know that we can configure repositories here, and then each of them have a priority order, which dependency track uses to decide where to go next to get the information. So in the same way, integrity analysis is also being performed now. Each of these repositories would be used in priority order to fetch published date information for the given version of component. And along with that, the hashes information if that is available. And based on priority order, it would go from one repository to next until the information is either available or it is not found in any of the repositories. So the data is not available basically. And yeah, so that's how it will work. And for this demo, I have an SBOM that I will upload, and just showing you, I have modified it a little bit. So on the right hand side is my SBOM, which has been, the hashes have been tampered with. So for example, the Quarkus arc, that one I have modified the MD5 to look different. And I have this log4j component, but the hashes I have provided here are bogus. Basically, they are not the correct values. And then similarly, I have this another component, which is the hashes I have just removed it from the component data. So when I upload this kind of SBOM in a test project, then the BOM upload would basically trigger vulnerability analysis, repository meta-analysis, and along with that integrity analysis as I have enabled it. And if we reload the page, right here we have got this published at information now available because of the analysis, additional analysis we are doing. So, and this date corresponds to the specific version of the component that is in the project. And then we have this integrity column as well, now showing you whether the hashes of any component actually matched what the remote source is saying or it was different. So for example, now the arc component for which I had modified the MD5 has an exclamation on it. And if I hover over it, you can see the component and repository hashes actually did not match. And for all the others for which it matched, there is a green tick against it. And for the log4j also, if we look at it, right now it's a, oh, okay. Let me change the hashes a little bit. So I've got these, 1 second. Okay. This one was a correct one. So I'll just re-upload with the modified value again. And that should lead to a mismatch really. And we would see the modified result. So yeah, that's how it would work. Yeah, now it is saying mismatch on hashes, right? So yeah, that's how it is looking at individual hashes of components. And if any one of them mismatched, the result would here say mismatch. And additionally, what we provide is, so you can turn the feature on and off. So for example, if we had this feature off before, and now we want to turn it on, we also allow the backfilling of information for components. So all the existing projects which would be there in the portfolio from before would have the analysis performed in the background. So yeah, right now it's not there, but if we had more projects here for which analysis was not done before and then I turn it on, it would get you that information. And how this is working is that for every time a BOM upload is happening, we are collecting the hash information for components as much as we get. But if you are turning off the analysis altogether, the computation does not happen as such. But when you turn it on, that meta information that we collected in the background is used to perform the analysis as you turn it on. So yeah, that's how this one looks like.
Awesome. Thanks, folks. I know we're over on time. Appreciate everyone that joined. You will get a survey when you close out WebEx. If you can tell us how we did and what you want to see in the future, that would be yes. And we do have plans for more community meetings. Yes. So thanks for that feedback and wanting to join us again. So please do fill out the survey. If you don't get a chance, feel free to reach out to any one of us and provide feedback. We welcome it. So appreciate all the panelists today, all the folks that demoed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks all.